Story 1. The Watchers Below. The sea swallowed my light like a hungry god. I dangled in the black, my flashlight cutting a weak beam through the murky water. 60 meters down, the pressure squeezed my skull. My regulator hissed in my ear, each exhale a slow, deliberate release. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. I was alone. The research vessel Aurora floated somewhere far above, unaware of what lurked beneath. My team had sent me to inspect a deep-sea recording device wedged in a canyon wall, but the moment I descended, something felt wrong. The water was too still, too quiet. Then I heard it. A low, oscillating hum, like the groan of bending metal, thrummed through the water. It vibrated in my bones, setting my teeth on edge. My headlamp flickered. I gripped the rock face, steadying myself, and that's when I saw them. Shapes. They moved just beyond the reach of my light. Slender, elongated things, drifting like weeds in a current. Only there was no current. They were holding still, watching me. My blood turned to ice. I fumbled for my dive knife, though what good it would do, I didn't know. The creatures, if that's what they were, didn't approach. They hung there, motionless, their bodies blacker than the water around them. I counted 5. Number 7. More. A sound like whispering filled my ears. I twisted, searching, but the darkness pulsed around me, alive and breathing. The hum deepened, warping into something guttural, linguistic. I wasn't supposed to hear words this deep. Then one of them moved. It darted forward, too fast, all wrong, before stopping just outside my light. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Pale. Too pale. Like something drowned long ago. Its face was smooth, featureless, save for 2 dark pits where eyes should have been. The mouth, oh God, the mouth, was a lipless slit that stretched too wide as it let out another metallic groan. The rest followed. They converged, slow and deliberate, their bodies swaying in a way that made my stomach lurch. I kicked backward, slamming into the canyon wall. The recording device beeped uselessly in my hand. Then my light died. Darkness swallowed me whole. The whispers became screams. I don't remember reaching the surface. Only the cold, the pressure, the feeling of fingers, too many fingers, brushing my ankle as I clawed toward the distant glimmer of the aurora. They let me go, but not before they spoke. And sometimes, when the ocean is quiet, I still hear it. Story 2. I have spent most of my career chasing the ghosts of the deep, bioluminescent shrimps that flicker like candle flames, hydrothermal vents that spew black smoke, and the promise that somewhere, far beyond the reach of sunlight, life has found a way to thrive. The ocean never tells you that it's watching you. It simply knows. When the research vessel Aurelia slipped out of the harbor at dawn, I felt the familiar thrum of the diesel engines under my feet and the salt-laden wind that always seemed to whisper, "You're leaving the world above." The plan was simple. A 2-hour descent in the Nereus submersible to the Challenger Deep's mid-shelf plateau at 2,200 meters, a survey of the benthic community where a new species of tubeworm had been reported. 6 crew members, a titanium sphere the size of a small room, and a suite of cameras and sensors that would turn the abyss into data. The initial descent was uneventful, a steady drop measured in bars of pressure. At 500 meters, the hull integrity monitor pinged a green. Then at 1,000 meters, it turned amber as the stress load calculation approached its safety margin. I could feel the sphere's walls flex minutely, a gentle, ever-present reminder that the water outside was trying to crush us with a force of over 200 atmospheres. The sound inside was a muted throb, the hum of the life support fans and the click of the sonar latching onto the seafloor's silhouette. By the time we reached 2,000 meters, the darkness was absolute. No light from the surface could pierce that depth. Only the tiny blue-white glow of our external lamps cut a cone into the black. I watched the footage on the internal monitor, the camera's view of the ocean floor, sand, basalt, occasional sponges, until a faint, pulsing silhouette appeared at the edge of the beam. Something moved. It was not a fish. It was not a crustacean. It was a shape that seemed to fold and unfurl like a piece of kelp, yet it glowed with an inner phosphorescence that never dimmed. Its outline was indistinct, a ripple of light that expanded and contracted in a rhythm that felt intentional. "Do you see that?" I asked, my voice cracking the static. The pilot, Mara, glanced at the readouts, then at the monitor. "It's probably a lanternfish swarm," she said, too quickly. "Or a gelatinous plankton bloom." Something reflected off the beam. I stared, heart hammering against my ribcage. The creature, or whatever it was, did not waver from its spot, as if anchored to an unseen current. It stared back at us, a dark void in the center of its luminous body. I could sense, improbably, that it was watching me. The sub's lights flickered. For a split second, the exterior hull was bathed in an eerie violet hue that seemed to seep into the glass. Then the lamp steadied, casting harsh white across the sea floor. My breath caught. The pressure gauge ticked up by a fraction of a bar, as if the ocean itself had inhaled. "Pressure spike, 0.3 bar, the system reported. "Compensating." Mara's fingers flew over the controls. "Depth sensor glitch. Resetting." The world outside the windows seemed to pulse in time with the sub's alarms, a slow, deliberate beat. I felt the sphere's metal skin tighten against the external pressure, and a cold that was not from the ocean seeped into the air inside. The oxygen monitor spiked, warning that CO2 levels were rising faster than the scrubbers could handle. "Something's wrong with the CO2 scrubbers," Mara said, voice flat. "I'm going to bring us up." I wanted to obey, but my mind was locked on the luminous shape that lingered beyond the reach of our lamps. I saw in my peripheral vision a faint filigree, like a web, stretching from the organism toward the hull, thin as a spider's silk, though I knew there was no such thing as spider silk in the deep sea. It glimmered just enough to catch the lamp's edge, then disappeared. A sudden jolt rocked the sub, a shudder that rattled the metal plates like a gasp. The alarm screamed, a chorus of red warnings. "Hull breach! Integrity compromised!" The lights flickered again, this time longer, and the external world dropped into absolute blackness. I was alone with my thoughts, the weight of the ocean pressing from all sides. In the darkness, the feeling of being watched turned from a vague unease to a prickle under my skin, as though 1,000 unseen eyes were focused on the thin glass that separated me from the abyss. "Emergency ascent," I heard Mara say, though her voice was muffled. A static burst through the intercom. The ascent began, the Nereus climbing at a sluggish pace, the ballast tanks emptying, the craft pitching upward as the water pressure lessened. Somewhere below, the luminous form seemed to glide closer, its motions smooth, almost graceful. I could hear a low, resonant hum emanating from the hull, as though the ocean itself was singing a dirge. The sphere shuddered again, this time more violently. A metallic groan rose from the hull, metal under stress, a warning that the compromise was getting worse. The outer hull, once smooth and unblemished, now bore a faint scar, a thin, filament-like abrasion that stretched around the lower port. "Seal integrity at 78%, the computer reported. "Emergency surface possible but not guaranteed." I stared at the scar, at the dark line that cut through the polished metal as if a blade had brushed it. It was fresh. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could picture the organism's tendrils, like the grasp of an unseen hand, slipping past the hull's defenses, etching a line into the metal. "What the hell is that?" I whispered, more to the water than to anyone else. Mara's voice cracked through the intercom, strained. "I don't know. We were never meant to go this deep alone. We should have had a second sub for redundancy." She was right. We were alone, cut off from the surface by miles of crushing water, each second a negotiation between the failing hull and the unrelenting pressure. The ascent slowed as the damage grew. The hull groaned, a low, mournful sound that reverberated through the steel like a funeral chant. Then, abruptly, the alarm ceased. The lights steadied. The green readout of hull integrity blossomed back to 100%. The scar, which had seemed to be a thin line, was now gone, as if the metal had healed itself. We breached the surface, the Nereus bobbing up like a wounded whale in a calm sea. The deck crew rushed to us, their faces lit with relief. When I stepped out onto the deck, the sun was a harsh white disk against a sky that still felt too bright for the gloom that clung to my mind. I asked Mara if she'd seen anything. She shook her head, eyes wide. There was a glitch in the sonar. The pressure spike was a sensor error. The hull breach was a false alarm. Nothing out there but a few lanternfish and some debris. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to convince myself that the ocean was a place of wonder, not of unseen watchfulness. But when I returned to the lab and examined the footage, the luminous form was there, still hovering at the edge of the beam, its glow steady, its center a perfect black void. It moved, not away from us, but toward the camera, as if it had been waiting for a witness. I stared at the screen for a long time, the image looping, the organism's pulsing rhythm syncing with the beat of my heart. In the corner of the frame, a fine line, thin as a thread, traced across the glass, faint as a breath. I never dove again. The ocean had asked a question I could not answer, and the answer was a glint of light in endless darkness, a feeling of being watched by something that does not belong to any taxonomy, and a reminder that the pressure of the deep is not only physical, it is the weight of the unknown pressing against the fragile shell of our confidence.